Are you worried about how to have your income last all through your retirement? If so, we've got the answers. I would encourage you to listen to this episode all the way through.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from Secure Your Retirement. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you receive alerts when they come out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone, to Secure Your Retirement podcast. We are really excited to have a conversation with you today on a topic that is near and dear to our heart. And the reason why is because it's something that we talk about all the time. It is something that individuals that are looking at working with a firm like ours, as well as our current clients, are always concerned and thinking about, and that is having an income that will last as long as they do in retirement. And you think about it, the reason why I think this is so important as we kind of build this up is that you work for decades and you have income coming in either from a job or for an employer. And then one day you decide I'm going to retire and you go, well, where am I going to take my money from? And then I've got all kinds of things I got to think about. How should my money be positioned? Do I need to worry about stock market volatility? These things are just things that give us a lot of anxiety. And I'll be very honest with you. It doesn't matter if you've got $500,000 or $10 million. The concern is the same. How do I build an income plan that will give me the income I need, keep up with inflation, be able to deal with the market volatility? And these are just things we got to think about. So I wanted to get us started there, Mercer. I guess maybe can you just talk a little bit more about this idea and the framing of the concern?
Yeah, so the big concern is you hit the nail on the head, which is I just want to know that my money will last, right? I've so many times in meetings we'll hear people say something along the lines of I've got what I've got at this point, or maybe I've got a couple years left of savings, but for the most part I've got what I've got and I need to know how we're going to make it last. And there's a lot of potential headwinds that could come our way when it comes to developing an income strategy. That's why it's so important to really think through all the different pieces that we're going to talk about today. But some of those are the most common one is the markets. The markets are ever volatile, especially in a year like this year or a year like in a pandemic year of 2020 or go back to 2008. Those are some bigger years that we've had to deal with. But the fact of the matter is the markets are always going to be the markets. While they provide us a great rate of return over time, there are periods of times where there are negative years or highly volatile years, and those are the last years that you want to be dipping into that bucket of money for, because every dollar you take out from that while that money is falling because the market is falling is a dollar that's not in there to recover if the market does recover, and that's pretty important. So the markets having an income strategy that's going to be able to withstand market volatility is really important. Another one, equally important, I would say, is taxation. A lot of us have built up dollars in 401ks or pre-tax type assets. And hey, I've got $1 million 401k. Well, the reality is it's not all your $1 million. There's a portion of that that's promised to the government. And so we have to take that into account and then fast forward into your later years that if we overlook this could be a tax headwind or an income planning headwind as well, which is your required minimum distributions. And then in between, making sure we're getting the taxation done properly and not making mistakes there. Inflation's another big one. I want to know that my money will last, but I also want to know that my money will continue to keep up with the cost of living, and I want to enjoy my retirement. I don't want to continue to have to make sacrifices. So how do I keep up with inflation? Inflation's a big story right now. We've had to deal with it for the last 5 years. We're continuing to deal with it. So how can I develop a strategy to keep up with it? And then the other is all around longevity. People are living longer and longer. And, whereas before you only had to plan for, living to 75, and that's a really good retirement, and then 80. And now people are living easily into their late 90s, into their hundreds. And so it's a much longer time period, especially if you retire at 60 or 65 and you live to 100. Well, that's 40 to 35 years of income that you have to be able to generate. And is that possible? And how do we structure that? So that's why I think, when it comes to a lot of these responses or a lot of these issues are really covered with what we would call simple because we want to illustrate it simple. There's a lot that goes on in it, but the concept is simple, which is something we've talked about before on this podcast, those three buckets and that bucket strategy. So Raiden, you want to take us into that?
Yeah. So The three bucket is, a lot of times people ask, what should be my investment strategy? And a part of this is the investment strategy, but really, how do I structure my money to take away anxiety? A lot of this is around, how do I have peace of mind in retirement? How do I have peace of mind that I know where my money is going to come from and that I don't have these worries? Well, if I set my money up into three buckets, bucket number one is my cash bucket. Bucket number two, we call our income safety bucket. And then bucket number three is our growth bucket. Now, how much money should go into each of these buckets? That really depends upon the overall structure, but we believe everybody should have some money in each of the three buckets, regardless of the amount of money that you have. They should have these allocations. So let's just talk about those buckets for just a couple of minutes. Number one, our cash bucket. Now, there is an old saying that people kind of go with, and they, throughout their working years, they think that you should have 6 to 12 months of cash of your income needs in the cash bucket. Really, where that comes from is, when I was working for an employer, if I were to lose my job, I'd need to have 6 to 12 months in the bank so that I could have time to find a new job. That's kind of where that came from. Most of our clients, though, when you're in retirement or real close to retirement, my job, if I lost my job or I quit my job, I don't need to replace the income, because I'm going to have income structured from my investments and my Social Security. And if I've got a pension, I'm going to have it coming from there. So we leave it this way. Cash bucket, very, very personal, meaning I've got some clients that want to have $30,000 to $50,000 in their cash bucket, and I've got some clients that want $200,000 to $500,000 in the cash bucket. Now, if you were to ask my opinion, I would tell you that's probably too much, but that don't matter. It's up to you. It's going to be what makes you feel good. So if you really want to hold that much cash, hold that much cash. That's okay. The next bucket, though, is the next two buckets, rather, is really crucial to saying what should be divvied up. Now, today on this particular episode, we're not going to go down to what the allocation should be. We're teaching you the concept. So our next bucket is our income safety bucket. So Merce, I'm going to let you handle the income safety bucket, and then I'll talk about the growth bucket.
Yeah, the income safety bucket is very much the goal of it, or the purpose behind it, is to provide stability with our money. And we can talk about how much goes into each one of these categories, but the dollars in this bucket, we want to be stable. We want that to be able to earn a decent rate of return. We would call that in the realm of bond-like or better. So, today I think it's very feasible for this bucket to be earning in that, say, 4 to 8% average rate of return over, say, the next 10 years. Interest rates are elevated right now, and so there's some advantages here, in particular in this bucket. But the key is that stable. It's going to make a decent rate of return. And then the biggest part of this, which goes back to stability, is it's got guarantees of no loss. Well, why is that so important? Well, if the stock market has issues and all of our money is in the stock market, and we go to a 2008 or even a 2020 or a 2022 here recently, if all of our money's in there and we experience a 20% slide in the markets, well, we're exposed pretty significantly, and we're no longer putting money into this plan as much, and so we don't have the ability to recover as quick, especially if we're withdrawing on that money. So stability and not correlated to what the stock market is doing is going to be rather important. What we are typically seeing that fits this bucket rather well is going to be in the space of the fixed index annuity. That's done through insurance companies and provides exactly what I said: guarantees of no loss or principal protection. We get access to our money as well, so that's going to kind of cover what Raiden was saying of needing to have some element of our essential needs covered, and maybe some of our wants in retirement all covered. This bucket, or that the fixed index annuity, provides that ability and a decent rate of return, especially given where rates are right now, without the risk of the stock market, without the risk of even the bond market. The bond market has had some issues over the last 5 years and has had some volatility, just like the stock market itself. Other things that can work in this bucket are going to be in that safe money type of category of CDs and what banks can offer. We just know rates are declining right now, and so the CDs that you bought two or 3 years ago are not going to be as attractive as they come due here in 2025 and going into 2026. Bonds are also an opportunity in this bucket, although you're adding an element of risk to this bucket if we are introducing bonds into the portfolio. We try to keep this bucket again not correlated to the stock market and this idea of guarantees and principal protection. So bonds don't always provide that. And so those are really the major categories of what's gonna fill up this safety bucket. And so bottom line is not non-correlation to the stock market, stability, predictability, so that when we get into retirement and we need to start drawing on our money to supplement our Social Security or supplement our pensions, this will be the first place to go because we know that if the market has issues, this bucket will not. So let's talk a little bit about the growth bucket then, Raiden.
Yeah, we think the growth bucket is really important as well because when we're talking to folks, they go, well, I don't want all my money to be so conservative and I don't get the upside because I think the markets do well. I would agree with you. The markets do well. The key is over time. If I look at the stock market over a period of time, it does well. I could also have very short periods of time where it's not doing well. You might think of things that pop in your head like 2008, 2020. 2022, and we could go on and on and on with these little periods, but then the market dips and then it comes back, and you just go, if I could have stayed in there, that would have been great. So what we want to do is construct the growth bucket to where it is going to grow with market-like returns. Good risk management, even on that bucket. We want to have good risk management, which provides us we're going to have things that are well diversified. We're going to have multi-layers to it. We're going to have some that is going to be looking forward. We're going to have some that it's a little bit more dynamic as to what's going on right now in the current times. And then we're going to have even some investments in that portfolio that are not, again, correlated to the stock market. They have risk, but they're not correlated to the stock market. That's going to give us good growth. Here's the beauty of the concept. Now, if we take these two and we put them together, is if the market is taking a pullback, and unlike if I had all my money in this category, I have my income coming in like what Merce just talked about in my income safety bucket. So I can allow the stock market to pull back some, and I'm not flipping out. I'm not losing my mind. I'm not saying, get me out of the market. I can't take it anymore. Why? Because I've got the income safety bucket that's providing that layer of safety. It's giving my income that I need to take care of the essential needs and even some of my wants. And that just takes all the pressure off. So now I can let the market do what the market does, and I'm not worried about it because I know over time the stock market's going to do pretty good. I just need to be diversified. I need to make sure that I'm allocated properly in the market, and I'm going to do really good. So what does this end result give me? I've got liquidity needs from my cash bucket. I've got income taken care of in my income safety bucket, and now I have growth. When I do that and I split that up, what I end up having is real peace of mind when it comes to these different buckets. Now, there's another thing to think about that we need to dive into, Merce, and that's the different tax buckets, different than risk buckets. But again, we're talking about income. So what are the different tax buckets that we have to think about marrying now to the investment strategy?
Yeah, taxes and your income are going to go hand in hand when we're doing good, sound retirement planning. So those three buckets when it comes to tax classification are going to be your tax deferred or pre-tax buckets, your taxable, and then your tax-free buckets. I'll walk through each one of these, starting with the tax deferred. This is the 401k, the traditional IRA, potentially a 403b or a SEP. There's a handful of different types of accounts, but the idea is we got a tax break in the calendar year that we funded into these accounts with the promise of paying tax when we start making withdrawals out of these accounts. And if we don't start taking withdrawals, eventually, currently around age 73 or 75, the government is going to force us to take withdrawals on these accounts through what's called required minimum distributions. So as this dollar balance grows, which is a nice thing, right? We get the employer match and the 401ks that comes in. And so the balance of this bucket continues to grow. Well, also so does our tax liability or our future tax liability. So that's an important one to keep in mind. And usually, and we hear people say this all the time, I wish I had known more about the tax-free bucket when I started saving years and years ago, because we start to realize how much tax liability we have in our 401ks. I'll come back to the tax-free bucket. Let's talk about the taxable bucket. This is really your, for most people, I think it would start as, hey, I've got some extra cash laying around and I want to put it to work. And so let me go buy some stocks, right? I open up a brokerage account, which is a taxable or even called a non-qualified account. And this one's taxed a little bit different. The 401k, every dollar that comes out is taxed as ordinary income, or look at it as you're creating a salary for yourself that's going to be taxed very much like your salary was. The taxable bucket or the brokerage account is not taxed on withdrawals. It's really taxed on transactions that happen within the account in that calendar year. So think the interest that is earned maybe from a money market that you're invested in, or think the dividends that your Apple stock is spinning out quarterly. Or if you sold that Apple stock for a gain or for a loss, it's going to have tax implications. So interest, dividends, and capital gains are how these accounts are taxed. The nice part about this is that your capital gains have a separate tax bracket. So there's a little bit of a tax advantage there. There's also no age restriction, whereas in the pre-tax buckets and the Roth buckets, we do have this rule of 59 and a half, where if we take earlier, we could run into some penalties there. The taxable bucket doesn't have any age restrictions, so it offers that flexibility too. But the most exciting and the most people wish they had more and more of is the tax-free bucket. That's your Roth IRAs. And then for some of you, you may have decided at some point to fund a cash value life insurance policy for retirement planning purposes. The beauty of these is you don't get any tax break up front for funding these accounts, but when we do withdraw them, they are tax-free as long as we qualify. And as long as the withdrawal itself has met the rules for that particular type of account. So thinking about this is that I put in maybe over my savings career, I put in over $100,000 into a tax-free bucket, but it has grown. And unlike the 401k, where while all that has grown, so is my tax liability, there's no tax liability in the Roth account. So when you put all of the three of these buckets together, now we've got a good diversification of tax assets: pre-tax, taxable, and then tax-free. And so what that allows for is a lot of flexibility when we're trying to create an income plan or a withdrawal strategy. It lets us, play around at the end of the day with your tax brackets to make it the most optimal for you. Imagine if we only have one, and imagine that's the pre-tax bucket. Well, there's not a whole lot of things that we can do without paying a lot of tax to try to get those into different categories, which we do all the time, by the way, is this idea of a Roth conversion. People have a lot in pre-tax. We want to get into a tax-free. And so we can strategically do that. But if we're walking into retirement with these three buckets, it makes it a whole lot easier to implement a very nice plan. So the more we have to play with as far as diversification factors in the investment side, but also in the tax classification side, it's going to make our retirement income plan a lot smoother.
All right, let's do a little scenario here just to kind of wrap things up. Let's say we got a very typical for us a client, the couple. They've got $2 million that they've saved up. So they're good savers. Of that $2 million, they got $1 million in tax-deferred 401ks and IRAs. They've got $200,000 in Roth. They've got $800,000 in savings and brokerage. So now you see how this all ties back. Those are the different tax buckets. So now what they say is, here's what we want. We both have Social Security coming in, but Social Security is not going to quite take care of our essential needs. We need some extra income, and we want this to be guaranteed and make sure that it's going to be coming in predictably. So what do? We take a percentage of those assets and we put it over in the income safety bucket that's going to provide those essential needs, maybe even some of the wants. We're then going to have the growth bucket funded, and it's there to grow the money. But it also, as it grows, allows us to then take some withdrawals if we need to for some fun things like cars and vacations and those kind of things that we have extra there if we need to, or for inflation. And then what's going to happen is throughout the years, we just had this happen last year, is that the growth bucket's going to grow faster than the rate of the income bucket. So what do? We rebalance. We take some money from the growth bucket and we move it to the income bucket, because now what are we trying to do? We're trying to keep up with inflation. And we just refill this process throughout the years, and it will just keep you moving in such a nice way that you will not have to worry. You will not have to have anxiety when the markets are doing what they're doing. You can rest. If you were to be in this office, and I say this all the time, when the market's downturning, you're not going to hear the phones ringing off the hook. Even in a COVID scenario, you're just not going to hear it. And the reason why is because people have a plan. They know what the plan is. They got the 3 buckets. They understand their tax buckets. They understand all the different aspects. It all helps them to rest and sleep well at night. So, Merce, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I would say, there's 2 categories of buckets that we talked about: the investment side of bucketing, cash, safety, and then growth-oriented assets. And then also really understanding the tax side of the buckets, being the pre-tax, the taxable, and then the tax-free. Having a good understanding of both of these categories when it comes to investments and taxation is really how we're able to put together well thought out retirement-focused financial plans. And so if you don't have one of these, or you need a better understanding of which buckets you have, or how to get into a place where you can walk into retirement without worries or without stress, we're always happy to have a conversation with you. Easiest way to do that is head over to our website, pomwealth.net, and you can find a place where you can put in your information, and we will have a conversation with you and see if we can help. And we're always happy to do that with you.
All right, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Secure Your Retirement. If you would like to learn more, we have actually created an online course called 3 Keys to Secure Your Retirement. This video course helps you to think through all the different steps as you get ready to plan for and live throughout retirement. You can access this by going to our website, pomwealth.net. In addition, you can also subscribe below to our podcast called Secure Your Retirement.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.